Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here in Israel to succeed. Whether that is reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, job interviewing, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language, in your country of origin, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. You can always be in touch with us by email, whether it's a request or a question or whatever it may be by email, hebrew@nbn.org.il. That's hebrew@nbn.org.il. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can always write to us in the chat window here on the Zoom menu bar. The Q&A is only for questions pertaining to the class we're about to start. You can also see all of our previous lessons up on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh or Nefesh B'Nefesh. You'll see a playlist with all of our previous lessons. You are going to need to scroll on the right-hand side because there are over 100 classes there. You can also do a free-form search. Type in Cafe Oleh grammar, Cafe Oleh something, and chances are there's a topic there. But as always, we want to hear from you. What topics you want us to cover? This class doesn't work unless we hear from you what topics are most relevant to you. Whether you're planning to make Aliyah, you've already made Aliyah, or you just want to learn modern Hebrew with us, which is no less exciting. Couple of housekeeping rules before we get started today. One, as we mentioned last week, tomorrow is Municipal Election Day. It's election day for all the local municipalities in the country, except for those that were evacuated on October 7th, which means that it is also a national day off of work for the vast majority of companies, including Nefesh B'Nefesh itself. So we will do our best to upload the recording of today's class and the spreadsheets and the vocabulary that goes with it ASAP. We will do it in advance of Wednesday's Cafe Oleh Conversations class, which this will be based on. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But rest assured, we will get it uploaded as soon as possible. Anyone who joins us for Wednesday's conversation class will receive the information in time so that they can prepare and learn a little bit and study in advance. Right, but with that, again, tomorrow is a national day off for the vast majority of private companies. There are basic services, just like on a regular election day, just like on other non-religious days off of work. We'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. It also has to do with today's topic, which I'm going to start right now. So this is a really important topic, both because it was suggested by one of you, a participant, which is always important for us, like I said before. Number two, it covers some really basic necessary information being in Israel. And number three, it leads into tomorrow's election day. And we're going to talk about what the municipality offers as one of the things we're going to cover today, which are emergency service numbers. This is something that often trips up people coming to Israel for various reasons. Number one is a really important one, especially if you're coming from the United States. Israel does not have one emergency number. There is no version of 911 in Israel. There are multiple numbers. And it used to be that you would be able to get a magnet or some very specific information with all the various numbers on there. Unfortunately, those aren't always easy to find. So instead, that's going to be part of our spreadsheet today. And equally important, we're going to go over the basic lines, conversations that will happen between you and the person in the call center to get the assistance that you need. Okay, we're going to do the basics of it. We can't go into the details of it, and there's some obvious reasons why. We'll cover that in a second, but really want you to not only watch this carefully, but also bookmark this when this comes up on YouTube, both the spreadsheet and the video itself, so that you can always go back to it. And for those of you who are joining us for Cafe Oleh Conversations, number one, there's still time to register. You can do so on Nefesh B'Nefesh's website. Go to the Israel calendar, and you'll see on Wednesday the link for it. If you decide to join us, number one, we'll be covering what we're going over tonight, specifically how to interact between a citizen and a municipal hotline, and we'll talk about what they cover in a second. And equally important, another last piece of housekeeping before we get started. If you join us on Wednesdays, this is a conversation-based class. You must arrive early. I know that people like to come in at various times for this class, especially they don't want to hear the same spiel at the beginning. I totally get that. However, we have over 100 participants last week, which is absolutely amazing to learn and practice Hebrew together. That requires you to be on time. Okay, you need to be in the class in the first 5, no later than 10 minutes, because we break you up into breakout rooms to practice your Hebrew. You cannot come late to Cafe Oleh conversations. If the time doesn't work for you, don't worry. It's a pilot run now. We're going to work on it in the future. But please, we really expect you to respect us and each other's time by arriving as soon as possible when class begins, 8 o'clock on Wednesdays. That being said, let's start this class. So we have a bunch to cover today. And first, we're going to start off with some basic vocabulary before we get into some important resources. So first off, when we talk about emergency call numbers in Israel, we need to understand what we're calling. And in all cases, it's what we call, all right, there it goes. It's what we call moked חירום. Okay, a moked חירום, a moked is any center. It's not a center of like the center of the universe. It's a center as in a physical space that is considered a center. It's the place where things are centered, meaning services or some sort of support. Okay, we use this word moked a lot in Israel. For example, moked shirut would be a service call center. It usually refers to a calling center, but it could be a walk-in center. Okay, that's what moked means literally. But when we're talking about a moked with regards to emergency and service numbers, that's the idea. Moked חירום, חירום means emergency, right? So a moked חירום is an emergency call center. And in the call center numbers, we're going to go over in a little bit. Some of these are going to be reviews, some of these are not. There are 3 different things you're asking for when you call up one of these. One is Ezra, help. One is Siyua, aid. The other one is tmicha, support. And you're going to see that emergency numbers in Israel work different, both in terms of the breadth and depth that they have, but also who you call for what. Okay, so with that, let's go through the basics. Now, again, there are other ones. I didn't go through all of them. I went through the ones that are the most immediate for as diverse of a population as we have here. And we're at 300 plus participants, which is absolutely amazing. I didn't go into all of them, so bear with me. If you want the full list, first off, they're not all emergency numbers, and second, Wikipedia. I told you that wonderful resource. You can go on Wikipedia, and they have all the emergency numbers for Israel. It's a pretty amazing list. All you have to do is type in emergency call center or emergency service number in English. Click on the language toggle. You'll go to Hebrew, and it'll show you the Israel-specific ones. Let's start. Okay, when we say, first off, number to call, this is a number on both a landline and a cell phone line. You don't have to do anything else, whether it's a cell phone or it's a land phone, to dial one of these numbers, with the exception of one, and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so first one is mea. Mea, or 100, is mishtara. Mishtara, police. If you need the police, and only the police, folks, again, there is no 911 in Israel. That needs to be very clear, especially to my fellow Americans. There is no 911. You cannot call one number and get the multiplicity of services that 911 in America gives. Okay, each service has its own number. You can obviously pre-program these into your phone, by the way, and write it in English so you know what to call. Some phones even come pre-programmed like that. Okay, mishtara, police, is mea. Okay, you need to get to the police, it will call mea. Now, in Israel, just a backup, Mishteret Israel, Israel police, is all, on the one hand, nationwide. On the other hand, if you call mea, you will be designated through all the different ways phones are connected and so forth to the local police district, to your local police district. They will find you. They will also ask where you are, and we'll get to those questions in a little bit. Okay. 101 is Mada. Mada is Magen David Adom. This is medical ambulance services. Okay. Magen David Adom is 101. If you, God forbid, someone has a medical issue, you call 101. That is ambulance services. Okay. Magen David Adom. 102 is Kaba'ut. Kaba'ut is firefighting, or simply the fire department. Okay, it's called officially usually Shirutei Kaba'ut Vehatzala, firefighting service, firefighting and life-saving services. Okay, but this is the fire department, 102. 103 is Chevrat HaChashmal. Okay, Chevrat HaChashmal is the electric company. The vast majority of Israelis are pay their electric bills to the electric company. There is slowly but surely going to be more competition in the electric in the utilities field, especially with electrics. However, right now this is the majority one. This is what you would call, for example, if there's a blackout or there's a power surge and something beyond just the fuse blows or something along those lines. There's something immediate, urgent, especially, for example, if your electricity is turned off for whatever reason. Blackout or brownout, 103. All these numbers are toll-free. If that needs to be clarified, all these numbers are toll-free. 104 is Pikud HaOref. Okay, Pikud HaOref is the home front command. We've talked about this a lot since October 7th. This is to get any specific answers for issues relating to home front command, meaning what are the current restrictions in my where I live? What are the current restrictions in general? Is there any up-to-date information I need? This isn't so much a number that you're going to get Ezra, help. It's more you're going to get Tmicha, support. Okay, because they're not going to be able to talk you through anything per se, except give you answers. This one we're going to come back to again, because tomorrow is municipal election day throughout Israel. And also this is a really, really important one. And I'm going to take you through how to use this very, very important number, 106. 106. 106 are all non-emergency services that are ultimately provided by your municipality. Whether you live in Tel Aviv, in Iria, whether you live in Ra'anana, which is a Muatsa Mekomit. We talked about all these differences the other week about local governance. 106 is the number you're going to call for non-emergency services that have to deal with you as a citizen. And we'll go through some of those in a little bit. But this is a really important number. We're going to come back to it. This is another number for the police, which is also important. And it's especially important if you have out-of-town guests. Because if they're using a phone that, for example, is locked or doesn't have an Israeli SIM card, or for whatever reason is just not working except on Wi-Fi, they can always, even if the phone is locked, they can always call 112 112 for the Mishtara. This is only for cell phones, as it's written here, police on all cell phones, even those locked. You can only use this number. This number only works on cell phones, not on landlines. And it works even if the phone is locked, even if the phone doesn't have a SIM card. Okay. 118, Shirutei Revacha, welfare services. If you need to get in touch with the welfare ministry, whether that has to do with your own well-being, a neighbor's well-being, another family's well-being, this is the number you want to call. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay. This is the number we've talked about before, 1201. 1201. Again, all you have to do is dial 1201 into your phone, your cell phone, or your landline. This is for Amutat Eran. Amuta is a nonprofit company, nonprofit organization. Eran is a mental health and trauma hotline. and especially since October 7th, but in general, they offer support 24 hours a day in multiple languages, including English. Okay, so if you need to talk to someone, it's the middle of the night or it's during the day, whatever time you need to talk to someone, Iran is a really important resource for you and loved ones. Another important hotline number. This is another number for both Ezra and Tmicha, for both help and support, is Melkaz Siua Lenifgaot Ve'Nifgae Tkifot Minit. This is, in Hebrew, it translates differently than in English. In Hebrew, it translates as the Center for Support, the Center for Aid for victims of sexual attack, sexual assault. In English, it's the Association for Rape Crises Centers in Israel. Again, a toll-free number, 1202 1202 if you identify as female, 1203 1203 if you identify as male. Really important resource that's provided free of charge. And finally, a really important service. And I bring this one up because number one, it's important. Number two, we get lots and lots of requests to do a class on driving in Israel. And I am pretty adamant that we're never going to do that, or not in the near future. We've done classes on geography of Israel. We've done classes on reading maps in Hebrew, but not actually driving, because if you're getting behind a car, a big piece of machinery, and you can't speak Hebrew, much less pass the local test, I don't feel comfortable. Besides the fact that I don't drive, I don't feel comfortable explaining that to you. Those are two things that really need to go well in hand. You want to drive here. There's a certain basic level of Hebrew that needs to happen there. Everything else is sort of mechanical that you don't necessarily need. But this is an important number that everyone should have, whether you drive or not, which is Yedidim. Yedidim is roadside assistance. It is 100% volunteer-led. You yourselves can be volunteers in it. It operates 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, not on Shabbat. And this is the number that you call if you have a flat tire. Your engine battery runs out. Your battery, excuse me, runs out. You have some sort of roadside assistance that is not medical, but you are stuck on the side of the road. This is the number to call, and they will provide you with help. A volunteer will come by and help and assist you with your car. A really important service, free of charge. Okay. The next two parts, especially those of us who are going to join for our conversation class on Wednesday, but in general, are going to be the things you're going to say to these various call centers, these various emergency call centers. We're going to go through first you as the person asking for help, and then we're going to do the person on the other side of the line. Why is this important? It's kind of obvious. You're developing a conversation with both sides. You need to be able to at least prolong it enough to get the assistance. And more important, we're going to start off with how to say, I don't speak Hebrew. And this is a really important point that I've talked about before, and I know people are going to ask me about. This is the point where if your Hebrew is not fluent, you need to be honest with that. And let me say this more bluntly to all of us on this call. If God forbid you were in an emergency situation in Israel and you don't have the vocabulary to deal with it in Hebrew, this is not the place to practice your Hebrew. Full stop. Right? If you, God forbid, need assistance and you can't speak fluently in Hebrew, or at the moment you can't deal with using your Hebrew, or you can't find the words, switch to English. You're going to use one of these two lines. Okay? All of these lines in green are for you, the person asking for help. Okay? But please, this is not the place. God forbid you need any of these emergency services. First off, most of them will have someone on the line who speaks English, if not the person who answers themselves. Second, this is not the place to practice. It's just not. If it's an emergency situation, we need to take care of the emergency. There's plenty of other time in our lives to practice Hebrew. This is not one of them. Okay? So if you are in that situation, this is how you ask, not just on emergency call centers, but in general. There are two different ways in Hebrew to ask if someone speaks English when you call. Yesh mishu shemedaber be'anglit. Is there someone who speaks English? Okay, that's what this first line translates to. Yesh mishu shemedaber be'anglit. Is there someone who speaks English? Or Yesh mishu shedover anglit. It's just asking it slightly different. Is there an English speaker? Okay, but either way, you're using very proper, very correct, very polite English, Hebrew, excuse me, to ask if someone speaks English. You can obviously switch out Anglit to any other language. Keep in mind, Israel has a set amount of languages that are more commonly spoken. English is one of them. But these are one of the two ways to ask. Is there someone who speaks English, or is there an English speaker? Okay, I'll even write that here just so you get the difference. Sorry, let me just pull that up, if it'll let me. Is there an English speaker there? Okay, very important. Equally important is if you ask that, or you're in a situation where they don't, and we'll get to what they'll probably say if they don't speak Hebrew. And this is very important when there are specifics in your report or why you're calling one of these numbers that you don't necessarily know the details for. Okay, is I do not speak Hebrew fluently. This is really important because obviously if you say ani lo medaber, or based on your gender, ani lo medaberet ivrit, that's a weird dissonance. You've just said in Hebrew, I don't speak Hebrew. Okay, you need to specify, I don't speak Hebrew fluently. This is important, by the way, in general, not just for emergency call centers, but if you're going to break out with the Hebrew, let's be honest about your levels. I want you to practice. I want you to practice as much as possible. We also need to know the limits of practice. We can't bring in a total stranger into our practicing all the time. This is a great example. If I need emergency services or just support and I don't have the vocabulary for it, I need to be honest with myself and the other person on the call. Ani lo medaber ivrit shotefet. Or female, ani lo medaberet ivrit shotefet. Shotefet, excuse me, is both an adjective and an adverb. That means fluent or fluently, depending if it's an adjective or adverb. In this case, we're using it as an adverb. Okay. You could also, by the way, in the way this sentence is constructed, it's also an adjective, right? But this is the way we say fluently in Hebrew, shotefet. Okay? Ani lo medaber ivrit shotefet, ani lo medaber ivrit shotefet, depending on your gender. Okay? Now, here are some of the various things you're going to say. For example, yedidim, that really important one. I simply need to say yesh li pancho. I know this may be really basic for some of you on this call, and that's fine. I'm trying to provide, as thinking ahead, how many of the most basic things we're going to be asking for on a regular basis. This is going to be a classic one. I have a flat tire. Punch-shell, by the way, comes from British English, from when the British Mandate ruled over this part of the Middle East. And they were also the ones to introduce cars en masse into what was then Mandate Palestine. So a lot of words have to do with that time period were adopted from British English, not from American English. So that's why we say still in Hebrew, yesh li pancho. So if I'm driving, I get a flat tire, I can call multiple numbers. One of them, a good one to call, is yedidim, right? I call them and say, hi, yesh li pancho. Okay, we'll get to what they're going to ask you in a little bit. Okay. I want to file a complaint or a report. Very important when you are, especially when you are talking to the police. This is a very important thing for those who are not familiar with Mishteret Israel, and God willing, you are not. You cannot, typically you have to file a complaint or report in person, meaning you have to go to the nearest Tachanat Mishtara, which you can look up on your phone, on a map. And typically, or you can sometimes do it online, on the phone, in which case they may direct you to come in person, they may not. But this is how you're going to say, I want to file a complaint. The word for complaint is also the word for a report in the way that some people think about it when you refer to the police. This can also be for non-emergency services for the municipality. Ani rotze, male. Ani rotza, female. Lehagish, tluna. Okay, lehagish is to serve in the sense of offer, in the sense of presenting. Tluna is a complaint. Okay, אני רוצה להגיש תלונה, אני רוצה להגיש תלונה. Okay. Similar in meaning, אני רוצה לדווח על, אני רוצה לדווח על. Excuse me. Lidavech is the modern Hebrew word for to report. It comes from the word duch or sometimes even duach, which in itself is comprised of the words din v'cheshbon. Okay, it's a new word in Hebrew, but it's used all the time, and we're going to see a great example of it in a few minutes. But ani rotze ledavech al, ani rotza ledavech al. I want to report on something, and I put in the blank there because that's what you're going to fill in with your own vocabulary, with the own situation that you're in. Okay. Another example of something you, God forbid, would need to call one of these emergency numbers for. Mishu menase le. Someone is trying to blank. This could be Mishu menase lifrotz labayit sheli. Someone is trying to break into my home. מישהו מנסה להחנות את הרכב שלהם במקום לא תקין. Someone is trying to park in a spot that is not valid. Don't worry about writing down these examples. There are many examples you can put in about someone else doing something. Again, I'm going to show you where you're going to use this quite often, and you don't even need to know all these different terms. But these are different ways to start off calling one of these numbers. And if you have the time and space and the vocabulary needed before calling them, you can fill in the blanks here before calling. That's the idea here. I'm giving you the prompts that you can then fill in the rest with your specific situations. I'm not going to go through the hundreds of potential situations you're going to call one of these emergency numbers. That's not a valid use of either of our time. I'm giving you the prompts that you can then go fill in. Okay, so we did all the different prompts for you to talk. Now about the person on the other line, the person in the moked shirut, in the moked cherem. What are they going to say to you? So first off, remember that we talked, excuse me, we prompted this by saying, I don't speak Hebrew, or does someone there speak English? So one of the things both you and, by the way, the other person can say is rega le'at le'at. Hold on, go slow, or go slowly. This is both whether there's a language difference, but also when you're calling one of these centers, you're often in a state of stress, anxiety, fear, whatever it may be. And sometimes to better understand you, even if you're speaking fluently in Hebrew, they're going to tell you to slow down. Don't take that as an insult. Don't take that as, why are you making fun of my Hebrew? It's maybe because your state right now is not the best one to be understood. Okay, so therefore we need to be able to slow down. Okay. Mahabaya, 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 Mahabaya. Either way you pronounce it, what's the problem? Oftentimes that's simply going to be when they call. Ishtarat Yisrael, Mahabaya. Israel police, what's the problem? Okay, so when you hear Mabaya, that's the prompt for you to start saying what you are calling for. Okay. Efo nimtza or efo nimtzet. Efo nimtza, where are you located, saying to a male voice. Efo nimtzet to a female voice. Okay, nimtza, nimtzet, located. Okay, to answer this, it's very simple. Ani nimtza, I am located. For a female, ani nimtzet. Okay, where are you located? Efo nimtza, ani nimtza be. Okay, efo nimtzet, ani nimtzet be. Where are you located? I am located at. If you're calling and you're speaking to someone, this is often the case. If you're using an app to file a report, and I'm going to show you again, I keep giving this teaser for what we're going to talk about next. You'll be able to use an online map, but that's the idea here, especially, for example, Yedidim, right? You need roadside assistance. They're going to need to know where you're at. You're going to need to be able to describe that. Another great reason why you shouldn't get behind the wheel unless you speak Hebrew. That's my own personal opinion. You can disagree with me on that. Hi, אני מהעירייה. יש עדיין blank. Hi, אני מהעירייה. I'm from the municipality. יש עדיין blank. When you call that 106 number for a non-emergency service, there often is going to be follow-up by phone, confirming that the problem is still a problem. That could be problems like a traffic light is out, or a street lamp is out, or there is a vehicle blocking the sidewalk, or there's unruly noise or a disruption in the street of some kind. They're going to follow up after you've made your report to ensure that as the inspector comes, it's still there. Okay. Another one, these are all prompts, remember, they're going to ask you. So it's good to know what to look out for and what to listen for when you're calling one of these numbers, what you need to listen for in order to answer accordingly, especially if there isn't anyone speaking English at that moment. אפשר לתאר לי את הבעיה? Could you describe the problem to me or for me? Could you, אפשר, is it possible? Could you, would you? לתאר or לתאר, to describe, לי, for me or to me, את הבעיה, the problem that you are calling about. Okay? After you describe, a very common reply, whether this is the police or any other service line that we went through, okay, tamtin ala kav, to a male, okay, tamtini ala kav, female. Lehamtin is to wait. Kav is line. So, okay, please wait on the line, meaning on the phone that you've called in on. Okay, tamtina lakav, male. Okay, tamtini alakav, female. I didn't put in vakasha, not because they won't say vakasha, it's just redundant because we're going to go through a couple more of these. If you call 106, that non-emergency number, okay, mishu מהעירייה יהיה בקשר איתך. Or, okay, מישהו מהעירייה יהיה בקשר איתך. Okay, מישהו מהעירייה, okay, someone, מישהו מהעירייה, from the municipality, יהיה, will be, בקשר, in touch, in contact, excuse me, איתך, with you, male, or איתך, with you, female. Okay. Another one that you often get when you call one of these numbers is תישאר צמוד לטלפון הזה, or תישארי צמודה לטלפון הזה, depending on gender. First one male, second one female. תישאר or תישארי, stay. It's the command form of the verb to stay. So תישאר or תישארי, stay. צמוד or צמודה, צמוד צמודה, next to. Okay, next to, alongside. לטלפון, next to the phone, הזה, this phone. Meaning whether you're calling on a cell phone or a landline, stay by this phone. They might need to call you back. They might need to confirm who you are. Whatever it is, this is also a very common reply from the moked to you as to what to do next. Just like all these examples in blue. And then finally is זה המספר קו הטלפון שלך, female. זה מספר או קו הטלפון שלך. Is this your phone number? Asking either to male or female, depending on שלך or שלך. But the point is, when they ask you, זה המספר טלפון שלך or שלך, it's again confirming this is the number to best reach you at. Is this your phone number? Okay. מספר, number, קו, line. Okay, so these are just, again, common prompts that whenever you're calling one of these numbers, chances are you're going to hear at least one, if not a handful of some of these in any given situation, no matter what you're calling for and no matter what these numbers are talking about. The one I want to talk about today is 106. 106 is a really important line. And I'm going to show you right now how important it is and how finally the Startup Nation has connected with all these emergency numbers and service numbers. Okay, so let me pull up a quick PowerPoint that I created. And we're going to watch a video over the latest one that's been launched. So if you are here in the Tel Aviv-Yafo municipality, such as where I live, you can use what we call 106 Plus. 106 is the nationwide number that will immediately connect to your local municipality. Whether you are a tourist, whether you're a resident, it doesn't matter. If there's anything that you need to report as a non-emergency service, it will go to the Moked, the call center that's connected with the nearest municipality. In addition to that, some of the bigger municipalities in Israel, not always the big ones, some small ones too, have their own app. All you have to do is go into Apple or Google Store. You can type in 106 and the name of your town and to see if there's already an app. Some of them you need a specific link for that the municipality website will have. If you are a resident in Israel, you already are in connection with your municipality because that's where you pay your arnona, your municipal tax, and your water. But this is the Tel Aviv app, and I'm going to use it because it was the first one that was launched. It's also a really handy way to see what the municipality offers in terms of services that you would report to 106. So first off, when I open up the app on my phone, 106, this is what it looks like on the screen. And what I would do is I would press this big circle in the middle, Divuach lemoked 106 plus. Divuach is the verbal noun of that verb ledaveach, to report. So reporting למוקד 106, to the call center, the service call center 106, the non-emergency number. Okay, so if I press on that, I then get a whole bunch of, let me just pull away the menu so I can see it, right? It says at the top, pirtei hadivuach, the details, pirtei, prat is a detail, pirtei hadivuach, the details of my report. Excuse me. And why this is good and why I didn't write these out, because they went and illustrated the vast majority of them. So I went through this with a friend who's just learning Hebrew. Great patience we both had, but especially her, because I made her figure out what each of these meant without knowing what any of them read as, but simply looking at the icon. That's the idea here, folks. When it's an app like here in Tel Aviv, and we're going to look at another one shortly, their new launching video. When you have these, it's easy to see the services they offer. Let's go through these together. Even if you don't know the name for these, you can already figure out and go back in this presentation to then empower yourself to know what to call these things. So first off, you see what hopefully looks to you like a fallen tree, but it's not just a fallen tree, it's been cut. Okay, and it says here, Pinui Arimat Gezem, removal of a pile of cut down branches. Okay, gizum is pruning, the act of pruning. So think of it as pruned branches. Everyone sees this, whether it's the municipality or a private person who trims their trees that often ends up in the middle on the sidewalk or on the curb, and it's a big pile and it sits there. That's one of the things you can call 106 to deal with. Another thing is pinui arimat eshpa. Pinui, we already said, is evacuation or removal of. Arima is a pile of, just like with the pruned trees before. Ashpa, trash. Let's say you have a lot of trash in your home, or let's say there's a lot of trash on the street. Whether it's yours or someone else's, you can call 106 to deal with it. Rechov lo naki. Okay, you can see it looks like a broom and a dustpan because it says Rechov lo naki. The street is not clean. A very important one here in Tel Aviv, which by the way, you will get fined for if you do not take care of your klavim, dogs. In this case, tsoat klavim. I think it's pretty clear from the picture what's happening there. You do need to clean after your dogs. Tel Aviv employs a DNA service to go after you if you do not clean after your dogs, and you will get fined. But in addition, you can also report on someone for having done it. Gina tziburit meluchlechet, a dirty public space, especially garden. Hadbara veyetushim, especially in Tel Aviv in the summer, this is going to be important that you can ask for hadbara, extermination, or for yetushim, spraying for yetushim, mosquitoes. There are more services if you roll down the screen, and I couldn't show them all here, but these are just some of the many non-emergency services. When you think of a non-emergency service, this is what they have in mind here in Israel. This includes, again, broken traffic light, broken lamp light, a rented scooter or bike that is blocking the street, a car that's blocking the sidewalk, all sorts of other everyday things that happen that the municipality is responsible for. Okay, get back to that. The next prompt, once you pick one of these, or if it's not any of these, you can write it in. Okay, the next thing it's going to do is, it'll let me, it's going to ask you for Hosefet Media, adding media. As you can see here, it's very easy. You don't need to know Hebrew. What Hosefet Tmuna is, you can see the picture. You've seen this prompt in other things. Add a picture. You click on it, it'll say, do you want it from your phone, from your camera, or your gallery? You can upload. So if it's a traffic light that's out, take a picture of the traffic light and you can upload it to the app as you're filing the report. Mikum ha-mafgea, the place where the incident is taking place. You can either write it in at the top, or you can use your fingers to zoom in on a location and then click on it and then verify it up here. You'll then click the blue button, and then it'll say Sikum Pirtei Divuach, the summation, the summary of the problem. I picked Panas Rachov Lo Takin, street lamp that is not working. I gave it an address. That's it. All I do is click the blue button at the bottom that says send, and then you will get a divuach. You will get the report that says all the different stages of your report. Hit kabel on the right-hand side, because remember, we go right to left in Hebrew. When it was received, you'll get further details as you scroll down. Betipul, it's being taken care of at the date and time that's noted. And then what happened to the case? Maybe it was tupal, taken care of. Maybe it was sagul, it was closed. I am a big fan of this app because I do have a passion for narking on my fellow citizens. And I have a lot of reports, and the Tel Aviv app is really good at gamifying it. So every report you get a status, you get points, which again, it scratches a particular itch of mine. I use this a lot during Corona when we had very specific and very strict guidelines, and some of my neighbors were not being so strict. And when it's situations that involve the police, the Iriyah will determine that and then refer the case to the police, and it will show up in this link. By the way, the Iriyah, and this is why some of those question prompts and dialogue prompts say this, the Iriyah, at a certain point, your municipality will probably call you up to confirm the details that are in this app. But this is a really easy way to use a service call center when you don't have great Hebrew. 106 is a great example of not only better technology, but also a service that we can more commonly use. And it's also a great illustration why local elections are so important, because all of those things that you can report on are all the things that the local municipality is in charge of. Transportation, sanitation, infrastructure, all sorts of other things that have to do with everyday life. Remember that when you go to the polls tomorrow, folks. With that, one last thing before I get to questions. To better illustrate not only what I just showed about what 106 does, with little Hebrew possible, and another municipality that many of you live in, I'm introducing you to the 106 app for Jerusalem. The actor you see here is a how would I say this? He's known very well in Israeli popular culture. He was part of a cult teen show called Hapijamot, the pajamas. And it was all about these three teenagers who hung out at a hamburger stand and had a band. This was the ornery owner of the hamburger stand and always seemed to get angry at everyone. And he, of course, and he had a sarcastic daughter. Anyone in mainstream Israeli society will recognize who this guy is immediately. You don't need to know Hebrew to understand this ad, but it is for Jerusalem's app version of what I just showed you in Tel Aviv. Let me show it to you. Okay, so first off, always hats off to the Jerusalem Municipality's social media division. For the last several years, they have amazing videos. We're going to show you another one of theirs for Purim when we talk about that in a few weeks, because they do a great job. But it was showing the fact that even if you didn't hear anything, you didn't have to. Don't live in the old-fashioned days where you wrote down all your complaints, and that's where all those um, notebooks were in his drawer. They were takalot, right? They were complaints. They were things that went wrong that he was complaining about, and he couldn't speak. Instead, here's the app to do the exact same thing. Okay, so with that, with the time we have left, let's get to some questions in the Q&A. Can you go over in the future the medical field going to the doctor's office? We already have a class on that. Please look at the YouTube class on it, on making a doctor's appointment and going to the doctor's office. If it's not sufficient, please write to us by email, hebrew@nbn.org.il, what questions we did not answer. Thank you. Is public transportation free during municipal elections like it is for national elections? I believe the answer is no. As far as I've seen, it is not free. The idea is that because it's local elections that you are already home. I could be wrong about that. I myself need to travel tomorrow, not to get to my poll, but I do believe it is not free, but don't hold me to that. Please, can you block the chat function? There is, as we've explained before, next to the chat icon, there's a small arrow. If you click on that arrow, it says hide chat previews. Now you know, but please operate that if you don't want to see the chat in there. And again, folks, please be mindful of others and please don't fill the chat with things that aren't relevant to this class or to learning Hebrew. Do we have to memorize these numbers? Again, absolutely not. First off, you are getting a copy of the spreadsheet. Second, that is what cell phones are for. If you buy a cell phone in Israel, most of these are pre-programmed into it. If not, you can program them in yourself in any language you want. Is there an equivalent emergency number even from locked cell phones for medical emergencies? Call the one that is for the police and they'll put you in touch with the ambulance. What is open on municipal elections aside from restaurants, museums? You need to check. Some, again, private companies, offices will usually be closed on election day, but public services may be closed or have limited service. You need to check with them directly. Everyone does their own thing, especially on election day, but especially on municipal election day. But a lot of places will be open. I know that stores, for example, retail stores, take advantage of the fact that it's a day off from school as well as from work, that they often have big sales. So that means malls, restaurants will likely be open. But again, check with them specifically. What if someone has a car problem, accident, which volunteers will not be able to handle? Who do you call? First off, if you are renting a car, you call the rental agency. Second, if Yedidim can't help you, they will refer you to someone. They are actual people. They are not, I'm sorry to be flip with this answer, but it's not like you're speaking to a robot. They will answer and help you. And help isn't always going to be physical. It may also be the nearest repair store is here, or the nearest gas station is there. They'll help you. And it's not always going to be, tell me where you are, I'm coming in my car. Can you also say Ani lo sholet basafa? That is a very formal way to say I don't speak Hebrew. And therefore, that's a cognitive dissonance you don't need in this situation. Ani lo sholet basafa. I'm not. I am not a master of the language. Folks, we're talking about calling the police. We're talking about calling ambulance services. You can use that line in other situations. Flirting, reserving something, ordering something at a restaurant. We're talking about emergency basic services here. That is way too highfalutin of a line to ask. Okay. That's again not just my personal thing. If I was on the other side of a call center, God forbid the police, ambulances, and someone starts speaking to me very frantic and says "Ani lo sholet basafa," it sounds like you kind of are. You kind of are in, you do have some mastery over the language. If you don't have the words for it, it's okay to switch to another language. They will find someone on the other side to help you. You will both find the language. Someone pointing out a typo in the line. I will take care of that right now. Thank you for letting me know. Great. Thank you for letting me know. Other questions? Let me see. This session is phone centric. What happens for people with voice disabilities? I apologize. I didn't make this as accessible for everyone. Again, just like with the questions and the conversation prompts, I'm trying to think of the largest amount of people here. It's not meant to defame, to leave anyone out. A lot of these services do have WhatsApp numbers, especially the emergency numbers, 100, 101, 102, 106, as you saw, is an app. You don't need to speak to anyone. Okay. But some of these do. You can also look all of these up, folks. Like I said, there is a whole list on Wikipedia of Moked Shirum. You can look up emergency call centers or emergency contact numbers in English, translate into Hebrew using the toggle on the page, and it'll give you the numbers in Hebrew. And a lot of them do have websites, and they do have WhatsApp prompts. I don't know them off the top of my head. I apologize for that. I'm trying to reach the vast majority of people. It's not trying to slight people with disabilities. I found 106 in the App Store only for TA in Jerusalem. What do you live in the periphery? Again, check with your municipality. A lot more municipalities have an app or an online service to report things. It's not always going to be an app, but it may be a website that's designated just for that. But check with your municipality. I know that such services exist for Netanya. I think for Ra'anana at a certain point, again, it may not be an app in the store. It may be a link to an app that you can only get through their municipality because we're talking about a smaller municipality. Remember, Tel Aviv and Jerusalem are the second and biggest municipalities in the country, respectfully. That's why they're on the Play Store. If they're not, if you have a smaller one, they may have an app. It's just not here. I would also, by the way, recommend just typing in the name of your town, your municipality, into Google Store app, and that would connect, and it might show you the app from there. What is the difference between takin and poel? They both mean working in English. They both mean, we would translate them into English as working or in operation. In Hebrew, there's a difference. Poel means working. We usually use the word that's comes from the same shoresh pa'il, which means active, which is the same form as takin, which means it's something that is working, right? Something that is lo takin, it's not working, meaning in the sense that it is not fixed. It's a slight difference, but usually when we're talking about objects, we'll say takin. Someone is asking, I'm not going to say it aloud because it's incorrect. Don't say that. The person who asked how to say, is it okay to say with regards to my Hebrew level, don't say it. Use one of the examples that I had. We couldn't hear the ad. Don't worry, you didn't miss out. The whole point was that he wasn't talking. I'll play it again, but you'll see the whole point is that he's not talking and that the app allows for, you don't need to talk to anyone or report anything. It's literally mute most of the time, but I'll play it again. Any tricks for getting out of a parking ticket? You're on your own. Sorry. Do you have to dial the plus sign before any of these? No. Again, 100, all you type is 100, either on a landline or 100 on your phone. Press send, that's it. You don't press anything else. Where is an asterisk needed when dialing any of these, and why are these symbols sometimes required? Great question. Those are not emergency numbers. A lot of companies have what we call a shortcut number, right? And you see these a lot on billboards. You see these a lot from major companies in Israel, right? Whether that's an airline company or an insurance company or any other company, they will have a 3 to 4 digit number that's usually preceded by the asterisks, in Hebrew, kochavit, right? Because kochav means star, asterisk, star, and so forth. Those are non-emergency numbers. They're shortcuts for sure, but they're not emergency numbers. Those do have a toll. Is Ezra a verb? Ezra is the act of help. Help as in a verbal noun. And the fancy word for it is gerund. But Ezra is the act of helping, if that makes sense. Is there a class that explains the vowel dots and symbols? Yes, there is. We talk about voweling in modern Hebrew as well in one of our lessons up on YouTube. Someone is asking the phone number for Hatzalah. I don't know it off the top of my head, which is why I gave you the number for Magen David Adom, which is the national service. There are other first aid services in Israel, like Ichud Hatzalah and Hatzalah. I don't know the other ones off the top of my head. I do know Magen David Adom. You can look those up as well. What's the difference between the 3 words I showed you and I gave you the answer for them? I'm sorry again if that sounds flippant, but again, folks, just like in English, we have different words, so too in Hebrew. Ezra is help. Siyua is aid. Tmicha is support. The difference between those is the difference between them in English, just as in Hebrew. It's the same difference. There's a reason why there are 3 different words. La'azor means to help. L'sayeya means to aid, and litmoch means to support. These are all the verbal nouns of the verbs that they represent. Just like in English, we have 3 different words, so too in Hebrew, we have different words. Same connection between them in English, so too in Hebrew. I do want to play that ad again because people have mentioned about the noise, but I want to point out the fact you don't need to talk into the app or to use the app in Jerusalem in order to use it. So when we're talking about accessibility, and I thank the person who brought that up in the Q&A, this is a great example of that. And it's pointing out that the old-fashioned, you needed to call into Me'aveshesh isn't always the case, at least in Jerusalem. So let me share that with you one more time. And if there are any last questions, this is your chance to put them in. Let me just pull it up as soon as I can find it. Here it is. And I will share the sound.
יש פסולת נטושה בניסים בחור 6. 6. שם.
אוקיי. דיווחת באפליקציה?
אפלי מה?
Right? It says if you come across a takala, a problem in the street, simply use the app Nefesh Plus in Jerusalem to report it. A really great service in the two big cities. Again, some of the smaller cities do have it. You might need to type in the name of the city or contact your Ilya to see if they have it, or they have a dedicated website that you can also use reports on. Okay. A few last questions. Okay, we're gonna stop here just because we're running out of time. A firm reminder to everyone on this call who made Aliyah and is in Israel and is eligible to vote. Please see last week's class. Everything you need to know about municipal elections, from where is my kalpi, where is my voting station, to how do I find out the muammadim, candidates running in my area, in my municipality, and everything else you need to know to get all the information to be an informed voter for tomorrow. Vote early, vote often. Polls open in most cities that you are in at 7 a.m. and close at 10 p.m. If you live in a place that has less than 300 citizens, it will be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 10 o'clock, the polls close. The midgam, the straw poll, the exit poll, it's the exit poll of the major cities will probably be released at 10 p.m. But as we talked about last week, because so many people are voting outside of their designated kalpi, in hospitals, in army bases, in prompted up places, it's important that everyone knows where they're voting. It's also, keep in mind that municipal elections, there are 254 local municipalities in Israel. It takes a long time to get the results, but the exit polls for the major cities will likely be released tonight, or at least some estimation. 10 o'clock on TV on all the major stations you can watch. Next week, first off, Wednesday, we have our conversation class, which will be riffing off what we did this week, and we're going more into complaining by phone or in person in general. Next week, we're going to talk about apropos TV. We're going to talk about media and media outlets in Israel. We do a lot about media literacy, reading through the major headlines. We're going to do a scan of all the major places you're going to get news. I'm not going to go into very small outlets, but I am going to try to cover political ideology, identity bases as much as possible. There are quite a lot because, you know, the old joke, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, very much the case in Israel. So there are a lot to cover, but we're going to do as much of a survey as possible next week. Until then, toda rabah. Thank you all so much for joining. As always, we appreciate your patience, especially because tomorrow is a national holiday. The recording and the spreadsheet with vocabulary will be up as quickly as possible, and especially for those who are joining us Wednesday for our conversation-based class. Until next week, litot, take care.